program. My name is Brock Lawley. I am your fearless host. This is the show. We tackle the news headlines, sifting out the alphabet soup, Democrat Party, media, sorry for the redundancy, lies like the chaff, the garbage, the waste, the bile in the back of your throat that it is. We sift it out from the golden wheat of truth to serve that up to your ADD reality television show, Wisdomless Minds, on a plate of rhetorical deliciousness. That is what the show is in a nutshell. Let's jump into the headlines, ladies and gentlemen. Everybody's going to lose their health care coverage. Pre-existing conditions, hysteria. Hysteria has taken place. It's swept the Democratic Party. It's as if these turd salesmen, they just went back into bathhouses that they matriculate from. They polished up the turd that is Obama fail, that crushed the poor, crushed healthcare. They polished that bad boy, and then they're coming back out there like, hey, you guys want bonbons? Bonbons. Obamacare is an explosion of chocolate in your mouth. It's just preposterous. Are we expected to have had amnesia in the last 6 years? Get ready, my fellow Americans, for the demagoguery. It is going to be poured on, lavished on, ladies and gentlemen, like gravy at a Thanksgiving Day dinner at your grandmother's house. Just pour it on, ladies and gentlemen. Nonsense, phony issues. I love this one. Everybody's going to lose insurance. Millions of people are going to lose insurance. Ladies and gentlemen, let me break this down for you. This is a very accurate way of looking at this. Okay, so let's take it out of the realm of health insurance. Let's talk about a different kind of insurance that you understand, everybody understands, right? It's not a right, by the way. It's just an insurance policy that you got to pick up if you want to drive your old four-wheel clunker down the road. It's called car insurance. Now, let me paint you a little analogy here. Here's what Obamacare actually is. Imagine you're forced by law to buy car insurance, even if you don't even own a car, don't plan on owning a car, don't want to own a car, have a bus pass, etc. Just imagine, though, you got to pay for it. Other people need to be on the road. Other people need to insure their car. You got to spread that around. Okay, you're like nodding your head. Now imagine this. Imagine that poor sap then who you're basically subsidizing. So you're basically paying for his car insurance. Even though you don't have a car, you might not want a car, you might not want to buy into this insurance company. Nonetheless, you do. Now you find out that this poor Joe Sixpack, this quote-unquote insurance that he has, the premiums on this insurance, even though it's subsidized, are through the roofs. So expensive that he can't afford it. Then imagine this. Then imagine when he goes into the doctor's office, which, by the way, is the point of owning medical insurance, and tries to use said insurance. None of the doctors take it. Moreover, half the doctors he could have went to have closed up shop because of Obamacare. What kind of insurance is this? But the Democrats are just going to run around. Everybody's losing insurance. Everybody is losing insurance. Listen, if you squint your eyes, have a 5th grade reading level, and you actually deep dive this situation, it's essentially the equation here is like it's like removing an albatross from people's neck. This was never about health care, ladies and gentlemen. Remind yourself of that. Obamacare was never about health care. It was never about insuring people. It was never about the poor. That's all crap. That's all crap. You spend $1 trillion and you got a bunch of people out there without health insurance, or moreover with health insurance that doesn't mean the paper it's scribbled on it's so pricey and ridiculous and fluctuating and unusable and unwanted. This does not help anybody. So the Democrats just take some talking point like, everybody's going to lose insurance. Everybody's going to lose insurance. Can you believe this? The Republicans are going to strip insurance, strip people down naked, kids, old people, everybody, little puppies. It's ridiculous. It's a talking point. It's hollow. But you know what? This is what the Democrats know. Your average American citizen, the person you might work with, your colleague, your neighbor, they don't know that. They don't know that. They don't care. Maybe they're lucky enough to have insurance through their employer, which they do know that's getting crappier and crappier. But the disconnect in all this stuff is horrible. Look, it doesn't even matter anyway, because Republicans are such yellow belly cowards that all they've done is inherited the lexicon of the left, inherited the words, the terms of the left. Look, I love that my fellow Americans go to the DMV. There's just great irony for me, your host. We go to the DMV, we get the snail mail, we interact with the incompetent, horrible government on every level. And what's the one thing it has in common? It always sucks. It always fails. It's always bad. Can you think of anything? Can you think of anything, ladies and gentlemen? The TSA, any kind of bureaucracy that the U.S. government is doing. Can you think of anything that doesn't suck outside of maybe the U.S. military? Can you think of anything? So all of a sudden, as a collective, at least on the left, we're like, yes, that is the entity of power and organization. Those are the minds. Those are the people. That's the system that I want to entrust my healthcare in. It's just insane. And yet that's all we hear. That's all we hear from the left. Bigger government, wider government, more government control, more government allocation of resources. It's insane. Why hasn't the Democrat Party suggested that your family get that money directly? Because, I'm not a big government guy. I don't like things being cattle shooted through the government. I just don't. I think it's horrible. But let's just say we have to capitulate on that. Why do you think they're not interested in that? Why does it got to be some program that they control that gets you to check off 1 million boxes of compliance before they write the check, if they ever write the check or whatever the case may be? Why can't they just give you the money, allow you to take it to the market? Have you ever asked yourself that question? Look, I remind you, we just spent $1 trillion, $1 trillion with a T, on healthcare. Did any of that come to you or anybody you know in any practical way? The answer is a big, firm, capital Z, zero cases. 0 cases did that happen. Nada, did not happen. Nope. Have you ever just scratched your head for 5 seconds and thought and said, why? The answer is the same today as it was yesterday, as it will be tomorrow, because it's not the point. The point isn't to insure you. The point isn't to take care of you. It's for the government to grow. It's for the government to grow. It's for bureaucrats to grow. It's for corrupt establishment bureaucrats to get bigger and fatter and more corrupt. It's just a fact. And it's ruined healthcare. And until we return it to the market, it will be a disaster. That's just the truth. Everything else is just song and dance. Ladies and gentlemen, President Trump signs a bill allowing churches to preach politics from the pulpit. Look, I'm going to just put a little disclaimer on this. It's not my favorite thing. I don't think they shouldn't be allowed to do it. I've always thought they should be allowed to do it. Of course they should. You know how many things you subsidize? NPR comes to mind, where they just proselytize leftism 24/7. The colleges come to mind. You know how much billions and billions and billions of federal money pour into the college so they can churn out conveyor belt style leftists? So this idea that a church, they're assuming that churches are all conservative, by the way, which is wrong. But they can preach if they want. They can get into worldview. They can get into politics from the pulpit without risking their tax-exempt status. It's called free speech, by the way. I mean, yeah, I know this is real controversial these days. New York Times is just blowing a gasket. Ladies and gentlemen, did you know Ben Carson? This is a quote. He's in all kinds of trouble, all kinds of bigoted, hateful, actual racist things, like calling the guy a porch, you-know-what, and all kinds of ridiculous names from the left. Did you know he said this? Let's not make government housing too comfortable for those who can work. That's the statement he made. I agree with every word he's saying. The left in the New York Times sneers. How can you say such a thing, they say? How can you say such a thing? How can you say something that makes sense? How can you say something so laced in common sense? You're supposed to spout leftist pablum that we preach, that we publish, that we confirm. No, he's right. Have you ever been to some of these projects, by the way? Have you ever been to some of these housing complexes? They're horrible. The New York Times editors wouldn't want to live there. No, they'd drive home to their gated communities, but it's okay for the minorities. It's okay for those poor people to live there. And I'm going to condescend to them here in the New York Times. And anybody who tries to solve any of these problems, well, I'm just going to call them a racist. New York Times, what a joke. By the way, same New York Times, ladies and gentlemen, its tolerant readers upset with a guy, Stevens. Why? He whispered in the most, in my opinion, wheat cheese, milquetoast way, climate skepticism. And how can they trust him, they say, if he doesn't grovel, prostrate before these readers, he has no business on the paper, they say. He has no business in the papers. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm telling you this. This is a fact, okay? This is their religion. You shall not insult our religion. To deny global warming, catastrophism is like drawing a picture of Muhammad. It's hate speech. You should be thrown behind bars, you barbarian, you animal, you dog. These people are so insane. They're so insane. There's no talking to them at all. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to walk you through this, all right? Here's the deal. First thing that has to be true for this, dogma to have any water holding ability. First thing that has to be true. CO2 harmful. Okay? Has to be true. It's not true. Has to be true for their religion to hold water. Second of all, there has to be a preposterous amount of CO2, like so much CO2 that we can't handle it. That's not proven. That's not proven at all. In fact, when you look in the rear view of some of this peer-reviewed stuff, it's not even warming. And even if it was, this has to be proven to be a bad thing, which it hasn't been. And lastly, this has to be catastrophic, right? Again, not proven, not scientifically proven. Lastly, human beings have to be able to do something about it. And every proposed thing they even come up with, which, by the way, they've been spouting the same thing for, 70, 80 years, proven wrong every time. Every time we're all going to die in the next week unless we give all our control of energy and thus our life freedom to some entity, I don't know, some gaggle of lunatics that bow at the golden calf of this climate nonsense. The weatherman, the Joe Sixpack weatherman beside them doesn't even agree with them. Look, ladies and gentlemen, they're fanatics. They're going after money. They're going after influence. It's a spoke in the wheel of totalitarianism. But that's not even the point. It's totally wounding science. It's totally shackling science. It's like a crazy dogma. This is what the left does, right? They circle the wagons, then they just dry up the moats and they pull down the gates, and you can't say anything they don't like and you can't think anything they don't like. That is a terrible environment for science. Horrific for actual science. It's junk leftist science, which should not be taken seriously at all. But you don't need science. That's the big elephant in the room. You don't need science. You don't need facts. You don't need anything. When you have Stephen Colbert out there saying profane nonsense, and when you have the media megaphones and you just pound and pound and mock and mock. This is the leftist version of science. Just create a media culture of mockery and ridicule, and then call what you're doing science. That's what they're doing. And historians, of course, will bludgeon them. But in the meantime, you're suffering, your society's suffering, progress is suffering, and wait for it, actual science is suffering. And that's why you should oppose it. Sidebar, there's a little flashback article in the HuffPo. Democrat activist, I'm going to die of global warming because Hillary lost the election. Yeah, that's a quote. That's an actual quote. He really said this. Can you imagine some poor chick that has to marry this dude? This dude? I mean, it just makes you want to cry. Friedman, writing in the New York Times, my model for a great governance, California, he says. California is $600 billion in debt, overrun with what they're using as a slave class, which is the illegal immigration. If you've ever been to Mexico, there's not as many Mexicans as there are in California being used by rich white guilt leftists who live in Napa Valley, but work their fields with Mexicans that they don't pay properly. These people make me sick. This is freedom. This is proper governance. This is what these guys do. They create alternative realities and then they try to force you to live in them. Colbert goes on a 45-minute insult rant on President Trump. The level of disrespect is completely and totally off the charts. Sounds like a fifth grader with a foul mouth. He's talking about genitalia in mouths on national television. By the way, I just want to point out that unsubstantiated just claims bring down Fox News hosts. Unsubstantiated. Slip of the tongues. But this guy's allowed to talk about penises and mouths on national television, and he's right back in his saddle the night afterwards. Just to point out the blatant double standard. Sick. The Roots of Leftist Rage. An amazing, insightful analysis. I want to turn your attention to this Roger Simon piece in PJ Media. It's really worth your read. I just want to remind you, since Donald Trump's been elected by a landslide election, by the way, this is what the left has offered you, right? And I'm just going to go through it. Ready? Vagina hat parades, smashed windows, fires, famous public universities denying free speech, kicking people off of campus, violently throwing bricks at their head, calling death to the president and vice president in public, Broadway plays, ridiculing the vice president. List is so endless. It's just so preposterous. And ladies and gentlemen, think about this. This is all just because they lost an election. They're so entitled to power. They can't even imagine any other way. They can't even imagine anything having validity or having anything be substantive except for what they think, except for what they agree with. So they burn, so they attack, so they silence, so they delegitimize, so they tear down generations and generations of electoral work and free and peaceful transfers of powers. They just crap on it. They urinate on it. They spat upon it because it's not what they want. It's not what they think. And anything else, I'm telling you the truth, anything else is just sacrosanct. Everything else is just a sin. Everything else is worth burning the place down for. This is the left. It is so transparent. It's so frustrating to me because it's not even in any way being hidden. It's as if what they are is like a Paris Hilton mindset about any thought or any political avenue or any proposed solution. It's frightening. It's terrifying. It's unprecedented. It's ridiculous. It needs to be called out a lot more than it is. Lastly, ladies and gentlemen, in university gone buck wild news, Butler University teaches Trump resistance course. That's something that Butler alums can be proud of. Ladies and gentlemen, writing thousands of dollars of college tuition checks. This is leftism. You're subsidizing it, by the way. You're subsidizing it to the billions and billions of dollars. That's another thing I'd love to see happen. Somebody just go to war with all this money that just gets funneled through the government into leftist causes, leftist mouthpieces, leftist idea mills, leftist propaganda trumpeting. I would love to see that stuff get just shut down. I think that's actually something that Trump should take very, very seriously because it could be a part of his legacy. If he's able to take the silver spoon of government financing out of leftist propaganda, he would do such a wonderful thing for the American culture and the American people. Ladies and gentlemen, now more than ever, you got to be people of courage. You got to fight for it. They're not going to give it to you. You got to fight for it. You can be right, but you still got to fight for it. You can go out and vote, but you still got to fight for it because you're dealing with a lawless, disrespectful left. They need to be fought. It's as plain as I can say it. Fortitude, character, courage.